Hey, confident leader. Welcome to this episode of the Confident Woman Lead podcast. I'm your host, Anita Miller. Today, the topic is how to work with your boss as a friend and not an enemy. And this is super important for your job and how happy you are at work. So, no matter if you're new or if you've been working for years, getting along with your boss can make a big difference. So, let's jump in and learn how to turn your relationship with your boss into something positive. And shout out to the Confident Woman Lead listener who sent or emailed me this question. She had a question and she thought it would be also helpful for all of you. So shout out to her as well. Okay. So when we think about how do we work with our boss as a friend, let me caveat that when I say friend, I mean someone that you have a good working relationship with from a work perspective. I don't mean your home girl, I mean your sister girl. I don't mean someone that you hang out with after work. In this case, when I say how to work with your boss as a friend and not an enemy, I mean that you both have an understanding that it's cohesive, that it's working, you guys are vibing in the spirit of getting things done with the least amount of friction, resistance, agony, all of those things. Okay? So first, let's talk about something called, and most of you have heard before, maybe at work, or maybe if you also have a side hustle, we use the term in business, the like, know, and trust factor triangle. It's a simple idea that helps build relationships even with your boss. Think about the people you work best with. You probably like them as people. You know them well enough to understand how they work and you trust them to do a good job. The same things matter when it comes to your boss. If you can build these three things, you're on your way to a better relationship with them, right? So if you can build on your like, know, and trust factor, you can build on your relationship with them and the ability to work with them in a friendly manner versus in a hostile or what feels like friction or enemy manner. Okay, so some things to think about as you think about this. And I'm going to give you five kind of important things to think about when you're trying to build that relationship with your boss. Number one, understand what your boss wants. Try to figure out what your boss wants, both from you and for their own job. Are they trying to move up in the company? Do they care about new ideas? Or do they just want everybody to get along? Do they just want to manage the operations, not lead it, not be innovative? Right? Understand what your boss wants. Pay attention and ask questions when you can. The more you know about what they want, the better you can help them get it. Number two, figure out what worries your boss. Next, I want you to try to understand what your boss worries about. Are they stressed about meeting goals? Are they worried about changes in the company? If you know what they are worried about, you can help solve problems before they get big. It also helps you talk to your boss in a way that makes them feel understood. Number three, be helpful. This is where you can shine. Ask yourself, how can I help my boss do well? Don't just point out problems, come up with solutions too. Offer to help with tasks that may make their job easier. The more helpful you are, the more your boss will see you as a friend, as the friend that they need. Now, because I'm talking to Black women and women of color, let me give this disclaimer. When I talk about being really helpful, I don't mean overworking, and I want you to pair being helpful with the other items I have in this list. So we're being helpful not based on what we think needs to be done, the level to which we think we need to do it, or that it needs to be done so that it's Black excellence or it's excellence of any regards. What do they want? How can you help them do that? And how can you help them avoid what they are worried about? That's what I'm talking about when I say be helpful. Okay. And then number 4, know yourself. This one's all about you. So, do you know how you come across to others? Are you aware of how you act in meetings or when you're stressed? Understanding these things about yourself can help you communicate better with your boss and avoid misunderstandings. Number 5, accept the differences and find things in common. Lastly, can you accept your boss for who they are and still do your best work? You don't have to be the best of friends, but you do need to find a way to work together and to work together well. This might mean changing how you talk to match their style or finding both goals you both care about, focusing both of you on something that you have in common versus maybe your approach. So we can both rally around this is the end goal, how we get there, how you get there versus how they get there. That's not something that we need to like go in circles about. If we can rally around the end goal. And that's also a leadership trait. Sometimes how we think things should be done isn't the only way. We might see it as the best way. But at the end of the day, from a leadership perspective, is it going to get done? Is something that we want to consider because we only have but so much capacity. All right, so if I just recap really quick, important things to think about when you're trying to build a relationship, be friendly with your boss versus it being conflict driven or hostile relationship with your boss or one that is not trustworthy. We want to try to build the like no trust factor. And in order to help us do that, we want to understand what our boss wants, which is number 1. Number 2, we want to figure out what worries them. Number 3, we want to be helpful where we can. Number 4, know yourself. Number 5, accept the differences and find things in common. Now, to help you do that, I want to give you some useful tips as you think about how to execute and build the like, no trust factor, right? So we have, hey, you need to build the like, no trust factor in order to turn them from an enemy to a friend or to just build a relationship that makes it conducive to working with the least amount of headache, right? So I gave you some considerations or some research, some things to think about in order to do that. Now I want to give you some tips for how you execute that in order to get to the end goal of building the like no trust factor, which is ultimately building the basis for a solid relationship with them. Number 1, talk to your boss regularly. Don't wait for your yearly review. Don't wait for them to call you. Set up short meetings with your boss often and stay on the same page. Now, as we move up, those conversations will decrease because there's an expectation that you know what to do, but you still want to stay in contact with your boss, even if that is DMing them on a Monday morning in Teams and saying, hey, hope you had a great weekend. Looking forward to our call today. That is all. Right? We're still keeping the connection between that person and ourselves top of mind. We're also keeping that connection because when it's time for promotions, when it's time for opportunities, we want to be top of mind. And if all we're doing is taking what they give us and going off and doing our work because we want them to stay out of our mix, yes, they may trust us to do that, but that's all that they will think about us. Number 2, in terms of useful tips to help you execute, think ahead. Try to guess what your boss might need next week or next month. If you prepare these things early, it could be super helpful. I'm going to give a disclaimer again here because I know who I'm talking to. I didn't say do their job, right? I said if you have capacity, what can you do? And a lot of time, these are little things that you're likely already doing. You're just not telling anybody that you're the one doing it. You're just not positioning it or selling it. That's what I want you to do. And that leads me to number 3, learn to manage up. This means talking to your boss in a way that's easy for them to understand, Being clear and always coming with solutions, not just problems. This means also showcasing what you're doing, telling them about your good works, how it's benefiting them, how it's helping that person meet the goals and deliverables of the entire team, right? Number 4, be reliable. Do what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it. This builds trust over time. It's more important that you deliver on time than over delivering or under delivering. Don't take home more work than you have capacity to. It won't be your best work, and then you'll miss deadlines. Number 5, handle disagreements well. Number 5, handle disagreements well. It's okay to disagree with your boss, but how you do it matters. Be respectful and explain your reasons clearly. And I'm going to even add to that, use a communication style that does not put them on the defense, right? So if you're talking to me, you can tell me you disagree and you can say it like directly. And I might not like it, but it'll be fine. If your boss is passive aggressive, if your boss likes to avoid conflict and you know that about them, don't set conflict or confrontation as they see it in their lap. Don't communicate in a way just because it's good for you. If the other person can't receive it, it's not effective communication. All right, so things to avoid along that note. 1, never gossip about your boss to anyone in the organization. Don't do it. You can't trust no one. Don't talk about your boss in a negative way. You can ask your mentor how they would handle a situation. But again, we're putting a positive spin on it. Hey, if you were in my situation, tell me how am I supposed to handle this versus saying they're doing this, that, and the other. It always gets back to them and it ruins trust. I'll even go so far as to say, inside of CWL for the month of August, our theme this month, every month we have a theme that helps us overcome an obstacle, and it's don't tell on your boss. This is the same thing. Don't tell on your boss, don't tell on your team. It always gets back and it ruins trust, and it cannot be rebuilt. Number 2, don't guess what your boss wants. Ask them, clarify, make sure you guys are on the same page. Number 3, don't let personal stuff get in the way of respect at work. Number 4, try to match how your boss likes to communicate. If they like short emails instead of long meetings, try to do that. Every person has a different style. Every leader you work with will have a different style. Sometimes they vibe with yours, sometimes they don't. And so it means that we have to adjust. Okay, I want to answer a few questions that I think may come up as you attempt to execute upon what I'm talking about today. So, FAQs. What if my boss is never free to talk? My answer is try other ways to communicate with them. Shoot a quick email. Put a short chat in Teams or whatever product that your company uses, Slack, whatever you guys use. Make the most of any time you do get. The next question, how do I deal with a boss who watches everything I do? My answer to this is start by telling them a lot about your work and doing a great job. Then you want to, as they start to trust you, as you guys start to build a rapport, you want to start to insert conversations or ask for things so that they start to back up. And so an example of this was I had a peer who became my boss at one point, and he was treating me like I was like somebody new out of college. And I eventually had to say after a couple of weeks, okay, listen, this is a bit much. A couple of days ago, a couple of weeks, it was longer than that, but we were peers. I can do the job. You know I can do the job. But if you have concerns, tell me what those concerns are, and let's come up with like an agreed upon approach for when it will be done. And in this particular case, his concern was the administration of things. One of the things I've learned in corporate is that it doesn't really matter how well you do a job as long as you check the boxes in the system. So he was really big on checking the boxes in the system. So we came to an understanding that as long as I checked the boxes on the system by the end of the day on Friday, so that when he got to work on Monday and the boxes were checked, he would stay out of my way. The boxes wasn't checked. We agreed upon what that meant for me, right? You see how I let him do it for a couple weeks. I answered all his questions. And in about the third week we did it, I was like, okay, why we like this is a very in detailed one-to-one. Why are we doing this? But I'm also approaching the conversation, say, okay, you know that I can do that because we have that level of understanding, we have that level of trust. But clearly, there's something that you are concerned about. Tell me about that. And let's talk about how we mitigate that or what needs to be done differently, as opposed to them trying to control it all without saying that directly to them. Okay, so remember that seeing your boss as a friend instead of an enemy isn't just about making work more fun. It's a smart move that can help you in your career a lot. When you and your boss will talk about you to others more. When you and your boss jive, you have a capacity to go off and network. You have capacity to do other things, even if it's just the mental capacity to do it. Because sometimes we might have time in our day, but we just don't have the mental capacity to go talk to someone else, right? So by understanding your boss, helping with what they care about, being super understanding and useful, knowing yourself better, and finding things in common, you can turn your relationship with your boss into something really positive. And don't forget that like, know, and trust. When I say trust, I don't mean that you trust them with your life. You trust them to tell you the truth. Trust when it comes to our careers means I trust them to be them. I trust them to be them. And I'm accepting that they are who they are so that I will act accordingly. I will conduct myself accordingly. I'm going to communicate in a way based on how I know they are, not who I want them to be. That's the trust factor here. It's not like you my homegirl type trust or you my parent type trust. Okay, so this has been an awesome episode of Confident Women Lead podcast. If you want to sign up for Confident Women Lead, you can go to confidentwomenlead.com and sign up today. Remember, Confident Women Lead by building bridges, not walls, paving the way for their own success and inspiring others along the way. I love you, sis. I'll see you next week.